Hello, welcome back to America Under Distress, America Under Siege. I know it's been a little over a week since I made a video. I just needed to feel that I needed to retool, refresh, take a break. Because once I decided to do this channel, America Under Distress, America Under Siege, I went full bore, learn as I go. But I'm proud of myself. I got 17 subscribers. Also, I'm around 800 views for that. And I'm making mistakes, but I'm getting there. And I learned a few more things since the break, but I needed to retool, refresh, take a rest, get closer to my family, get closer to my God, because this is a mission for me to try to get the information out there the best way as possible in a fair, unbiased way. As a history teacher, I tried to do that when I was teaching, and I'll do it here as well, even though I do have personal opinions. So, thank you for having me back, and here we go. The topic of this video is propaganda films. I'll give you one short little clip of the history of propaganda films. I'll send you screenshots about definitions and things like that. And the three topics that I will cover, actually four. One, the top 10 movies that changed the world. The top 10 movies that are historically accurate, with a few minor inaccuracies. COVID-19 and COVID-19 inspired movies. And a couple movies out there that you may not know about that will blow you away. I got one that's a perfect choice. It's about the Civil War. I watched it by accident, and it stunned me, it blew me away. So, and I'll also give you a link to how you get these flicks. If you're interested in politics, if you're interested in the world around you, you've got to know how they get their message across. This is one of the 6 areas that I mentioned before from the Soviet defector. Going back to that video. I'm not going to go through that again, but this is social life. A movie, you go out to see a movie, you spend your money. Of course, I got to get some popcorn and things like that. I love popcorn. Don't talk to my wife about that because I always got to get the big bucket and stuff like that. But that's just me. I love popcorn. But sometimes you go see a flick and you walk away stunned, blown away. Most of these flicks will do exactly that. And like I said, I'll put a link so you can get these, because some of these you have to watch. Some of them are long, but you could see how they affected history. And some of these I actually used in my classes when I was teaching history. I had to get permission. I had to get parental waivers, because some of the subject matter is pretty intense, but that's why I couldn't show R-rated movies. I can only show clips of it. It had to be general, it had to be documentary form, and things like that when I did my classes. And at the end of this, I will go through the commentary, but I won't use their videos, and I won't use their screenshots, and I won't use their posters. Since I viewed these movies, and I watched them numerous times over and over again because they were important to me, I know these flicks. I'm not a movie critic. I'm just going to tell you what I feel. And it won't be long. It'll be very short because I've sent out the requests to show the pictures. Eventually this video will be redone once I get the permissions. That's why I'm not using the clips and I'm not using their posters in this one. That's intellectual property and I don't want to get busted for that. And when I come back, I'll give you some food for thought, because we're still technically in this pandemic, even though there's some states that are more open than others. And it's just that you need to think about this, because movies is entertainment, social life. And it's important that you see these flicks. Now I'm going to insert the video for the history of what a propaganda film is.
Film having an impact on the world at large is the propaganda film. Before we go any further, I want to define the propaganda film as a state-funded film with the intention to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Now, there are 3 eras of propaganda films, and 2 defining traits that make up these eras. First, what was happening in the world, and second, what were the capabilities of film and filmmakers at the time. The 3 eras are pre-World War I and World War I, the interwar period and World War II, and post-World War II and up till today. But in this video, I just want to focus on how it was used in the first two periods. Film lends itself very well to propaganda for a number of reasons. Film, like very few mediums, can capture reality, but that is also a reality that can be manipulated. Filmmakers have almost total control of the finished product. It can be mass-produced and shared, and as I'm sure we all know, can create emotions unrivaled elsewhere. Being an audiovisual medium, a lot of information can be presented in a relatively short period of time, from images, sound, dialogue, and on-screen text. From the birth of cinema, it was used to manipulate audiences. Going back to the late 1890s, Vitagraph Studios created a series of short documentaries with the intention of creating an anti-Spanish sentiment in America during the Spanish-American War. As film became more popular, during World War I, almost every major nation involved with the conflict put some emphasis on creating propaganda films. Oftentimes, these were very brief excerpts from the war to show the strength of their nation. However, the medium was still in its infancy, and its true power wasn't realized until the interwar period. In 1925 in Russia, Sergei Eisenstein was tasked with directing Battleship Potemkin, a historically accurate look into the 1905 mutiny aboard the titular battleship. You could spend hours discussing the impact that this movie had on film as a whole.
I was doing this Sino-Russian War before the revolution in 1918.
It shows a revolution and shows the success that can come from Russians working together. In just 80 minutes, the film takes you on an emotional roller coaster, leaving you with a prosperous Russia. The film works phenomenally as a piece of propaganda. Following its release, it was banned in a number of countries for fear of creating a revolution. These countries include Germany, France, the United Kingdom, and even Russia itself once its politics changed a few decades later. Jumping ahead to when World War II broke out, the medium of film had skyrocketed past its preliminary stages in the early 20th century, thanks in part to innovators like Eisenstein and his innovations in editing and storytelling. Leading up to the war, Germany capitalized on the power of moving pictures and released a number of documentaries that showed the potential strength of Germany. These documentaries were aimed at everyday working people, people who already were struggling following World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. Throughout the entire war,
they used that against the West.
Amount of its resources into promoting the beliefs of the Nazi Party through film. The majority of these films focused on escapism and the unlimited potential that the Nazi Party could bring to Germany. These films distracted people from the horrors happening around the country.
Distracted.
With affirmation that everything will be okay. The United States and other allied countries' response to these propaganda films was to outdo them.
Right.
They didn't have nearly as big of a budget, but what they did have was a group of great filmmakers working together to use the cinematic language to help change the world. Dozens of great filmmakers worked around the clock to try and combat the propaganda machine that was the Nazi Party. Because of their limited budget, they were forced to be creative, improvising different techniques that could effectively play with emotions, techniques that would be later utilized in their own films. But anti-Nazi films didn't stop at the state level. Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator may have been the movie that had the biggest impact on the world.
Hi there, welcome back. Basically, I stopped there because I could not show too much of the clip. That was only a couple seconds of it. There's rules about showing movies in videos because it's, like I said, intellectual property. And you can't do that or you'll get a copyright strike or copyright claim. So that's the history of what a propaganda film is. And it's very important in the definition. It's state-run, and it basically picks their opinion of what they want the country to be like. I have to say, this goes back to another video that I talked about, which is it's The Art of War, Sun Tzu. Propaganda and spies and that kind of technique has been used since the beginning of time, since Hammurabi's court. There was actually one of the first reports that they found on the cuneiform tiles of how they figured out language, and the Rosetta Stone was about spies. Look it up. It's on the internet. And again, don't just go to the internet for your confirmation bias of what you basically believe for yourself, but try to get the information for understanding the other person. That's one of those tools that I used when I went to college myself. It was important to me to understand the person I was going to debate. Okay, and then it also gives you an idea of how the other person's thinking. And you may actually change your opinion and don't just find something that you agree with to shove it down somebody's throat, which that happens way too much. The top 10 movies that changed the world. This is a short little statement that I saw. Number 10 is Super Size Me. If any of my former students are watching right now, most of you remember when I showed that movie in class. It blew me away because this guy ate nothing but McDonald's for 30 days. And it changed policy, at least it changed policy and how McDonald's acted. They had to take notes, they had to take Cornell notes and things like that in my classes. But that was very cool to the students because they saw this guy's health go downhill after 30 days. And it changed policy. And the government, laws, and every aspect of the 6 areas that I mentioned before from the Soviet factor was affected by this movie. Number 9, Rosetta. This movie is about a young girl that basically ran away from home to get away from her abusive mother and actually changed laws in her native Belgium. Number 8, 2001 Space Odyssey. I saw this with my family because my dad was an engineer for the boosters that helped to build the space program. He actually worked with Wernher von Braun. That's another video because I'm going to do a critique of this book, okay? And I'm going to cover every 19 person that's in there. So basically how they affected our policies. That's another flick. But 2001 changed the world because of the technology, the things that were portrayed in that movie, flat screen TVs, mainly the technology. The space station, you remember the spinning space station? They have those. They have all that stuff now. And it changed how the world did the space race too. I said, I remember seeing that. I remember comments from my father when we were watching the movie. Number 7, Harlan County, USA. When I saw this, it was in college. And actually later, my oldest sister married somebody actually from Harlan County. When I watched this video, I mentioned it to him. Yeah, I don't think he remembers me talking to him about it. But it was about these people fighting back against corporate coal miners. These people were trying to film the struggles of the average people in that Harlan County, Kentucky. There is a Harlan County, Kentucky. And this video actually won an Academy Award. And I'm not too big on the Academy Awards nowadays. I'm not too big on many actors nowadays. But this showed the strife and the troubles of those people. JFK. This was very controversial when it came out. There was a lot of information in that flick that basically upset a lot of people. Again, these are going to be very short. Inconvenient Truth is actually a video from Al Gore, the former presidential candidate. They got into that 2000 problem with recounting Chads, Dimples, and all those things. I remember because I'm from Florida. Luckily, we didn't have the problems in our county, mainly with South Florida. It's about global warming and the environment. It's considered on the list because it was telling the truth as they see it. Again, this is their opinions, and it's on the list. Number 4, Battle of Algiers. This is another one that I saw in college. The reason why it's important is this was so accurate about the struggles after World War II. Many countries were fighting for their freedom. All through Africa, all through Central Asia, all through the world, they were saying, you're fighting for freedom, give up your nationalistic tendencies, give up your colonial powers, which is what they had before World War II. This movie was actually used by terrorist organizations, the CIA, to how to effectively take somebody out. That's why it's on that list. Number 3. This is one that is called The Triumph of Will. It's a 1934 propaganda film of how they created this wonderful persona of Adolf Hitler and how he took over Germany and how he manipulated it. And I have to say, Sun Tzu brought it up in The Art of War around 598 BC. The Nazis perfected propaganda, and now countries are following what they did. Those speeches of Nuremberg and the marching just motivated and the German people. It nauseates and sickens me, but that's just the way it would work. And it's number 4 on that list, number 3 on that list. This is another one that if you watch it and you get this flick, it'll just irritate you to no end, because if you're not racist, this should anger you. You watch this flick. It's called Birth of a Nation. There's actually 2 copies of this, 2 versions of it, the 1915 version, and there was a remake in 2016 from a totally different perspective. So, The Birth of a Nation actually called riots, murders, death, and actually the rise of the KKK in the 1920s and the 1930s, because it depicted what the producers felt was going on in their country. I will have other shows about the Black Codes. I'll have other shows about the birth of the KKK. But this video, I'll just leave it at that. It's so racist. It's so nauseating for me to watch that. But I did it for one reason. To see it and to see how it affected me and how it affected other people. That's why they do these things. And the number 1 list on this list is actually The Thin Blue Line. Personally, I would not have put that number 1, but I watched that in college as well. It's basically a documentary format. Basically, a Dallas police officer was killed, and this movie actually got the person in a new trial, got him out, and freed him. It was done in a documentary format. Their interviews and the thoroughness of the directors and the producers, it saved this man's life. And I just have to leave it at that. That's why they can change the world, because it changed every aspect. Religion, law enforcement, social lives, all those things. And I'll go quicker through the historically accurate one. Number 10 is actually Come See Me. It's actually about the German occupation during World War II. This thing is brutal because it was so accurate. They were using live ammunition in it. The Flags of Our Father, I read the book. I saw the movie about 30, 40 times. And plus, since I'm a United States Marine, I was just feeling devastated of how they actually survived that island. It was unbelievable. It was written by the son of Doc Bradley, which is the corpsman that lifted the flag on Iwo Jima. Lincoln. My remembrance of Lincoln is the debates on the floor of the House of Representatives when the 13th Amendment was passed. How they talked about African Americans, as I call them, people of color. They treated them like total dog. I can't say the word, I'll get a flag on this one. Watch it. Check it out. And it was very accurate because one of my favorite presidents is Lincoln. On the Republican side, my favorite president that's considered a Democrat is FDR. They both changed the world and they actually saved our nation. Both of them, as far as I'm concerned. Das Boot. This is a German subtitle movie about submarine warfare. You know, it's like, that one blew me away because it just showed me what it's like to be in a submarine. And it's subtitled, it's all in German. Just, you know, again, that's another one that's on the list. Tora, Tora, Tora. I saw that when I was in high school. Actually, just before high school. 12 Years as a Slave, a very realistic portrayal of the abuses during the slavery era. And actually, some people say the slavery era is still around. The Pianist, Schindler's List. I have 2 versions of Schindler's List. The red coat, little girl in the Polish capital, seeing her with the red coat, and then seeing the red coat in a cart, and she's dead. That stunned me. And the scene with the ring, his gold ring, could have saved another life. It's hard for someone to watch abuses of other human beings and accept it. He was a war profiteer, Oskar Schindler. Downfall. I saw this movie later. It's actually Adolf Hitler during the Bunker, the last 10 days of his life, and how crazy he was and how nuts he was. I didn't feel sorry for him. He destroyed human beings. And the number one film on this list is Apollo 13. This is very personal to me because my father worked in the space program. He worked from 1958 when I was born. There's actually a story of me, my mother told me about it. I was 6 months old and he was working on a rocket with Wernher von Braun. That's going to be on the Operation Paperclip show that I do, my version of it. But my father worked on this film of bringing them back. My mom told me that his biggest part in that flick was he was one of the engineers trying to come up with the filter system because their air supply was getting toxic. So he helped with designing that filter system so they could breathe. And I heard that. I felt so proud of my father because he was, when it came out, we saw in the theaters. I watched it like 50 to 60 times. And I met Gene Kranz. I met some of those people. I didn't remember them at the time. And it was very inspiring to me. So it comes down to those videos that I just talked about. I'll put in a link of how to get them so that you can purchase and watch them. Some of these videos will upset you, but you need to watch them if you want to understand, especially the ones that are historically accurate. Personally, you should do your own research for those things, but it's important for you to do so. That's it for those critiques. But on the thumbnail I put in there, it was COVID-19. Since COVID-19, there have been movies, there have been infomercials, there's been commercials. Again, in the definitions, it's government funded. It promotes a point of view, the government does, or the people trying to promote that view. You're seeing commercials and infomercials about vaccines. I'm not going to get into the debate about this is bad and that's bad. I definitely have my opinions about vaccines. I definitely do. And I'm not too thrilled about it, okay? But that's me, okay? But there are videos that actually are considered COVID-19 films. And they are basically, here's a list. Songbird, actually there's about C23. Contagion, Corona Zombies, and Totally Under Control. There's also videos from at the 1-year anniversary of the coronavirus. It was produced by the government of China, the CCP. It was in We're Turning the Road, and it was trashed. There's actually movies on HBO and things like that about this same topic. But you got to take one thing every time you watch videos about the movies and these C19 videos on these movies. Who's producing them? What's their point of view, and what are they trying to tell you? Okay, sometimes I don't trust the government. Most of the time I don't trust the government. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat. Because I remember 1971 and 1972, just before we moved to North Canton, Ohio, my father sat there and watched the Watergate hearings. And he was angered, and he was disgusted, and he was betrayed by the lies the American government would tell him. And so was I. And then in '76, I joined the Marine Corps, and I tried to protect my country. The government doesn't tell you everything. We are in an age of censorship. Again, I'm going to bring this up again. When the President of the United States, even if you don't like him, can be banned on Twitter and Facebook, you got a problem there. The First Amendment of the Constitution states freedom of speech and press, among other things. You ban people's freedom of speech, you're violating that Constitution, and they should be held accountable. Remember your resources, check them out, and again, take this video, check out these flicks, do your research from different sources, get different opinions to make up your mind. One side doesn't have a monopoly on the truth. Both sides use the same techniques to convince you. Remember that. I mentioned earlier at the start of this video, there's a movie. This is one movie that blew me away. Check it out. It's about the Civil War. What happens if the South won the Civil War? It's called CSA, Confederate States of America. It was a film in 2004. It's actually labeled a comedy satire film. It's in the mockumentary form. In other words, they're mocking in a documentary form. They're mocking this because this is so insane. I had former students that are of all races consider this insulting. But if you are a person that wants to see how we're being manipulated, this is how they manipulate. What happens if they did? And it went through that premise all the way to the end. I was angry a lot during that movie, but I sat there and watched it and was like stunned of how they manipulated the facts, manipulated the truth to get a passion from you one way or the other. So, that's propaganda films. Every time you look at a video or watch a movie, consider its sources, consider. The next video that's coming up after this will be another aspect of this channel that I wanted to promote, which is actually museums and saving our history and saving our culture. It will be going through all the war museums that we have. The first one will be Revolutionary War, Yorktown Museum, which is actually the inspiration for this channel. And then also Mount Vernon, which is George Washington, and I'll go through in chronological order, hopefully. Every single war that's listed we have, there's museums for them. And also I'll start a section about honoring Medal of Honor winners. That's coming down the road too. So basically I'll do one Medal of Honor winner, read the citation to you, and do a tiny little clip because of what this person, man or woman, did. And actually there have been women Medal of Honor winners. There have been. Okay? Thank you for putting up with me. And thank you for the hiatus of a week. And like I'm at 800 views, 17 subscriptions. Keep liking and sharing. I figured out inserting videos, putting music in the background. That's not copyrighted, to make sure I'm covered there. And it is not copyrighted. So thank you. See you next time when it comes to Revolutionary War museums. Bye.